The most important ankle in Columbus, Ohio is, quote, feeling pretty good. Kyle McCord's words, not mine, as the starting quarterback of Ohio State updated the media tonight on the status of himself. And the Buckeyes talked to the media on a Wednesday in the Woody with Tim May, the 40-year vet, with Andy Backstrom, with me, Spencer Holbrook. Tim, other than Kyle McCord's most watched ankle, what was your big takeaway from the Woody Wednesday, as we like to call it?
Head coach Ryan Day, who does his lightning round now on Wednesday instead of Thursday, offered no update on Lathan Ransom, said that will come on their availability report. I think that is a concerning situation there with Lathan Ransom. How long is he going to be out? I think he's going to be out this week. I think y'all would agree with that, right?
Yes.
And how long term could his situation be? And then Emeka Egbuka, I think he expects him to play. Mm-hmm. You get the idea of that. And looks like Travion Henderson got through the week with no no problems, because you always got to check up on Travion from one appearance to the next. But that's my big takeaway, is that Ohio State will be pretty close to full strength. Devin Brown, I think, is probably still a week or two away from returning, the backup quarterback. Ohio State football almost had that Tristan Gebbia moment last week. But as I asked Kyle McCord, what kind of drives you to get back in there? Because clearly he was banged up. I think his ankle's been banged up for a while.
It has, yes.
Based on what we know. But then he got aggravated. Boy, when it gets aggravated, look out. But and he wanted to get back in there, and finish off what he started.
My takeaway is it's a bit of a homecoming for this Rutgers game. You have Kyle McCord, who's from Mount Laurel, New Jersey. I know he played in Philadelphia in high school, but he's actually from New Jersey, and his dad played quarterback at Rutgers, and so there's obviously a tie there. And Greg Schiano, Kyle McCord spoke highly of. Greg Schiano was a coach here for 3 years under Urban Meyer, kind of jump-started his coaching career in the college ranks again, and then got back to Rutgers for that second stay. Davison Igbinosun, another player with ties to New Jersey. He grew up in New Jersey, was a highly touted player there. He said that Rutgers was all he knew. He actually was committed there for 4 months.
For 4 months, yeah.
And then he eventually flipped to Ole Miss to play in the SEC. And then on the second go-around, when he was in the portal, Greg Schiano reached out and he said, Davison was basically like, well, I want to play for a team that can contend for a national title. Now he is. Ohio State's number one in the college football playoff rankings, and Davison Igbinosun's part of that as a starting cornerback. And he's playing against his brother, Desmond Igbinosun, on Saturday at Rutgers.
Yeah. And then also, Cody Simon, who spoke tonight, is from New Jersey as well. So there's quite a bit of Taiwan Malone. The list goes on and on and on. There's some good homecoming notes there for some of these guys. It's always fun. Every other year when we go over to Rutgers and this team gets to kind of share their own stories of the homecomings. Luke Whippler and Ronnie Hickman from a couple years ago.
Right.
That it's just it's an interesting wrinkle, because you have a hotbed of recruiting, then you got this program over here, and then they go there, every other year. So I think it's pretty cool. Tim, the note about Lathan Ransom I thought was interesting, but then we got a little in depth with Kyle McCord about his ankle injury. A lot of times these guys are kind of coy about their injuries. I think Kyle's out on Front Street with his, just because, first of all, it's the ankle that's taped. He's not
obvious which one it is.
He's not hiding it at all.
Right.
He says that it's in pain, but he's learning to play through it. He says it's not affecting him at all. He says that it's good to go. Again, he's feeling pretty good. You can read about that at lettermenrow.com, as I just wrote before we hopped on this video. But clearly, he's not at 100%. And that's something that you just have to monitor moving forward. It's not something that's going to keep him out. It's not something that's going to limit this offense, but it is something to monitor if it begins to.
Yeah, and Ryan Day didn't give it short shrift, except this. Every quarterback, by this time in the season, 8 games into the season, 9 weeks into this season, every quarterback is dealing with something, especially if he's playing as much as Kyle McCord has played. And you do learn to grit your teeth and deal with it. Whether it's a sore shoulder, you can have sore shoulders and still play, Ribs are a big deal for quarterbacks. And also, you're vulnerable every time you throw a pass, it's standing there in the pocket. I'm not just going through football 101, but a lot of quarterbacks at this moment in the season are dealing with aches and pains. What's that old line? They're hurt, but they're not injured.
Yeah.
And I think Kyle McCord's showing true grit. I'm not surprised by it. I mean, he's waited his turn. Now this is his turn, and he's going to play as long as he can. Like I said earlier, there was almost a Tristan Gebbia moment last week when Kyle McCord limped off the field, really hopped off the field, gets on the the bike, and it just tries to get things loosened back up again. And Tristan Gebbia was about to come in, right? You remember that? And so then you're going, okay, this is one of those moments in this season.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Cal McCord jumps back out there and actually played pretty well, I thought, in the fourth quarter and got him through it. So, yeah, quarterbacks have to deal with these things, man. You're standing in the pocket, you're delivering. Not everybody is on your side out there.
And his number one target, the Heisman Trophy contender himself, had some good things to say about his quarterback, even though there's a lot of things being said about Kyle McCord right now.
Yeah, a lot of negativity out there from outside this building about Kyle McCord, what he can't do potentially. And I asked Martin Harrison, like, yes, you must block that out, of course. That's the goal here at the Woody, but it's natural to let some come in. And he said, yeah, like, we're not listening to that. Kyle McCord is someone that's in this building first, leaves last, all the things you would want to hear about a quarterback. And it's very clear that they have a lot of confidence in what he can do for this team. But, hey, they also – I think I was very clear, too, that they're not sleeping on this Rutgers team right now. I mean, this is an underrated Rutgers team, as Kyle McCord said. They're 6-2. They clinched bowl eligibility 2 weeks ago. They're coming off a bye. And, by the way, they clinched bowl eligibility to be in a traditional bowl for the first time since 2014. Remember, they ended up playing a bowl during the 2020 season, even though they weren't technically bowl eligible. But this is a Rutgers team that we're seeing it again. Greg Schiano once again ushering this rebuild of this program in Piscataway, and there's a lot more talent that they're building. They're not quite there yet with a lot of depth, but the dudes that they do have playing right now are pretty talented.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's something that this Ohio State team recognizes, and just as every week has kind of been, it's a game, you know. I think it's going to be another one of those weeks just because that's the way this season's going.
And this Rutgers team, they play 4 quarters. I mean, you know, there's no sliding in the Big Ten. Wisconsin played all 4 quarters last week. I know, you know, that's a euphemism, but it is clear they kept throwing punches, man. They kept at it. Rutgers is probably going to do exactly the same thing. There's no easing in to the last weekend of November for Ohio State. That's for sure with this schedule.
Yeah, I think
I know you're going to bring up Michigan State, but you know.
Yeah, Michigan State's pretty bad. So is Minnesota. But, I mean, those are still games that you got to probably bring it for. Michigan State's
Minnesota beat Iowa.
A night game. Well, us 3 could beat Iowa.
No, I don't think so.
But I think that this team is kind of locked in. You're right. It's not I'll be honest. It's not a typical Rutgers week. I covered Rutgers week in 2019. I covered Rutgers week in 2021 and 2022. 2020 was on
Is that on your resume?
on Zoom. No, I'm just saying, like, Tim, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Weeks like
I'm just asking if it's on your resume.
it's on my CV. The weeks that you know
They're
that
available
Ohio,
in the lobby.
you know the weeks that you know Ohio State's going to win. You get like a 1-8 Northwestern team. You get like a 2-6 Minnesota team, and you're Ohio State and you're undefeated, and you can just feel it in this building. Like, there's just something about this week where they kind of know they're going to win, and then it's on to the next one. I don't get that sense this week, Tim.
No,
you've been around here a long time. Like, I don't get the sense that this team is just sleepwalking into Rutgers week because, hey, even though the competition is not very good, if you went like best win Rutgers, I don't think you'd find very good wins. But also, they're 6-2. They find ways to win, and there's something to be said about that in the 1st of November. Yeah. So Ohio State's not sleeping on Rutgers at all, Tim.
No, I mean, there's a respect here for Greg Schiano. That is
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Day didn't keep him on his staff. You know, when they made the staff change after the Rose Bowl in 2018 season, but there is a respect for him for what he has done and what he is doing. I mean, he's building block. He's putting building blocks together to build Rutgers back to, he hopes, maybe even better than he had it going before he left, you know, way back when, and made them a power, in my opinion, on the East Coast. Superpower, no, but made them a team to be contended with. He wants to get back there again, so that's why it's individual respect. Plus, you click on the video. This is a sound football team for the most part.
That's a good way to describe them. Sound.
And number 2, they have a quarterback from a defensive standpoint for Ohio State, a quarterback who's a threat, you know, running and throwing, but really running that presents problems that maybe the last several weeks have not presented. So there are all kinds of reasons not to sleepwalk on Rutgers.
Yeah, the biggest notice that I had this week was last year Ohio State was a 41.5-point favorite against Rutgers. This week, they are, the total for the entire game is 42.5.
Yeah.
And Ohio State's only an 18.5-point favorite. That's not like everything, but Vegas knows what it's talking about. That's why there's skyscrapers in Vegas and not shacks. So, like, they know what they're talking about. So I take that pretty reasonably to assume that, like, Rutgers is a better football team. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one over there in Piscataway. Andy, closing thoughts before we get out of here on a Woody Wednesday.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting storylines is that both these teams don't give up the big play. There's two teams in the country that haven't given up a play of 40 or more yards, Ohio State and Rutgers. And so just as Ohio State's defense has been really locked down, limiting those explosives, so has Rutgers. And I mean, last week against Minnesota, it was an explosive that helped Ohio State seal the game, a 33-yard run. I know it's not 40 yards, but it's close. 33-yard run by Travion Henderson.
It could have been
shut
40.
The door.
It could have been 40
Right.
if there'd been more field there.
Right, exactly. So this is going to be a game where, Ryan Day was asked about it. Like, do you game plan differently against a team that doesn't give up explosives? Are explosives accidents or do they just kind of happen? He said it's a little bit of both, but I'm going to be watching for that. Can they crack an explosive against this Rutgers team that hasn't given up many, and that's why they're not giving up a lot of points, and that's probably why that line is the way it is.
Yeah, and in the passing game, you're probably going to be feeling happy with 10, 12, 15-yard pass plays, etc. But man, if you see that safety bite one time, you got to be ready to strike, and that'll be on Kyle McCord's plate.
You've also got Marvin Harrison Jr. out there, and Rutgers hasn't given up a 40-yard play, but they also haven't seen number 18 out there. So we'll see what happens. We're all going to go over there and see what happens in person. Tim May, the 40-year vet, he's going to Piscataway. Andy Backstrom, he's going to Piscataway. I will be there as well. We're going to make that trip across Pennsylvania into New Jersey and see what Piscataway is all about. Can't wait to eat some good food on Friday night and then get to the stadium on Saturday for Ohio State Rutgers. It will be on CBS if you're not making the trip. Lettermen Row will be there, have you covered, where we do 365 days a year. Go get that coverage. $1 for the first month. That gets you through the Michigan game. That gets you into almost the Big Ten championship game, almost into that college football playoff season. And by the time you go through your first month, you're going to just want to re-up and pay the price anyway. So I suggest you go do that. $1 for the first month right now at lettermenrow.com. You get all of this coverage. We'll see you there at lettermenrow.com, and we'll see you over in Piscataway on Saturday.